Anyway, so she decided she gets a graduation trip. No one else has a graduation trip.
Is she the youngest?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds about right.
So we just got back from Disney for that. So that was, yeah, well, my brother's in the army and he's in Kuwait right now. So everyone minus Kevin.
That's good.
Yeah. He's good, yeah. So that was great. Technical concentration in carpentry. Yeah. I mean, every time I tell someone that, I'm like, yeah, that's just like, cool.
I mean, equally cool.
No, I know what I do.
Sonia Osborne Museum Studies Symposium. Thank you all so much for showing up for us, whether you're in person or you're tuning in virtually. You're giving us an hour of your time, and Lucy and I are both really grateful. As many of you know, this program was created in honor of the passion and commitment of my predecessor, Sonia Osborne, and the many students she inspired through the study of art history in her 20 years at Westover. And on a personal note, it's been my honor to steward Sonia's legacy in art history through this program. In honoring Sonia through a generous gift from the Tortoriello family, we set out to create a program that provides a student with an opportunity to participate in a comprehensive work study internship at Hillstead Museum and to earn art historical scholarship through research projects. Students travel to Hillstead once a week to work with the curators. They collaborate with our archivists each week to learn more about the connection between Hillstead and Westover, and they select a work from Hillstead's collection to develop into a symposium paper. This semester, Lucy spent a total of 40 hours at the museum, where she selected a work from Hillstead's collection to develop into the paper you'll hear tonight, an argument she then visually realized in an artistic installation that is currently on display in the gallery. Tonight, Lucy will first informally share a bit about her internship experience and its various components before she shares her formal symposium paper. After her presentation, which will take about 40 minutes, Lucy will take your questions before she gives thanks to those who made this experience possible for her. She'll then invite all of us to enjoy dessert in the Schumacher Gallery so we can view her exhibition alongside the work of our community members in the community art exhibition. So please join us for dessert in the gallery at the conclusion of Lucy's presentation. Before I introduce Lucy, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that it really does take a community to support this program. From the Tortoriello family and their generosity in making this internship program possible, to the community members I practiced this so many times, you guys. All right, to the community members who show up year after year to hear each symposium presentation, to the individuals who Lucy will thank who help me run this program each week. I'd also like to thank the community of alumni, and 3 of you are here tonight. Some of whom are here tonight, yeah, thank you. Who continually show up for each year's SOMSI student, whether in person or through encouraging emails. Thank you all so much for your support. True to Lucy's argument tonight, what an incredibly powerful community of learning we've created together. And now Lucy, okay, this is where, okay, just be patient with me, okay. Lucy is a fierce and disciplined scholar. She commits herself fully to her work and is resourceful in her learning. She knows what needs to be done, and she shows up having done it, all of it, every time. And yet with that intensity comes a depth of thoughtfulness and a sense of curiosity and brutal honesty that makes sharing in Lucy's learning such a joy. I want to read to you, I'm sorry I didn't tell you this, an early reflection that she wrote after one of her first visits to Hillstead. On the subject of Melanie assigning her the task of transcribing an interview with a Pope family member who also happened to be a Westover alum, Lucy writes, "Before transcribing the interview, Melanie told me that it was fine to dislike the task she gave me. She told me that while most interns liked the experience at Hillstead, some found the job boring or tedious and may never want to work in a museum. Her honesty drove me to think about what I want to learn from my time at Hillstead. So far, I liked the space and enjoyed my task, but I know there will be parts that I do not love so much. In that case, I think I'll tell myself it is okay. Try my best to communicate and just cherish what I learned during the process." And this is how Lucy approached her entire internship experience. She cherished the process. In all ways, she leaned in with curiosity, accepted the challenge in stride, asked questions, and embraced each learning opportunity, no matter how crazy the ride she may have felt she was on was. And this came through every day, particularly in the moments when Lucy was accepting feedback, because she wouldn't just listen to feedback, she would immediately apply it. And not just the feedback, but the process of learning, from the way she practiced presenting to the way she began to deepen her arguments in her paper. And in this way, Lucy has once again truly set the bar high because she's risen to every new challenge. For example, Lucy is the first SOMSI intern to give a formal presentation at Hillstead to the freshman class on their field trip. And she didn't just share some of her observations. True to Lucy, she prepared and practiced over a month in advance an in-depth historical portrait of Hillstead, complete with architectural analysis and her personal connections to seeing Theoday's influences at Westover. And it didn't stop there. She also gave a well-practiced docent talk on the very painting she's presenting tonight. And while I was in awe of the way Lucy modeled professionalism in learning for her younger peers, my favorite memory sorry, of that day at Hillstead were the moments we stole between tour groups, looking at the Cassatt painting and noticing the brushwork, Cassatt's crazy use of space and the composition. Because Lucy has an artist eye and she sees deeply, and it was a pleasure just to look and notice with her. For that, I will always be grateful, and I'm so excited that you all now have an opportunity to take pleasure in that looking with her. Please join me in welcoming Lucy.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm a little emotional right now. Hi everyone, I'm Lucy, this year's SOMSI intern. First, I want to thank you all for coming to my symposium tonight. SOMSI is composed of 3 parts: the internship, the Westover Hillstead Connection Project, and the Museum Studies Project. I applied to SOMSI because I've always known that this is a special opportunity for Westover students who love art history, and I'm an artist myself, so interning at a museum sounded really appealing. Speaking of my internship experience, I'll share a little about Hillstead Museum. Hillstead was previously a private home for Theodate Pope and her family. Theodate is the architect of Westover, and she and her family collected many artworks and displayed them in the house. After Theodate passed away, Hillstead turned into a museum for the public. And thanks to Westover's connection with Theodate, I had this great opportunity to intern at Hillstead. So this is a photo of me on my first day at Hillstead. I traveled to Hillstead every Wednesday and worked with a senior curator, Melanie. My work includes transcribing interviews, organizing items in the archive, and writing descriptions for the archival materials. So here are more photos of me during my internship. This is me presenting Hillstead, introducing Hillstead to the freshmen during their tour. And I also did a little talk on the painting by Mary Cassatt called Sarah Handing a Toy to the Baby. And this painting also became the focus of my 2 other projects. Here on the left, I'm working on writing descriptions for a Natsuke collection, or a collection of Japanese mini sculptures. And on the right, I'm organizing a decorative arts pictorial guide. Here, I'm writing descriptions for some really old bills, and this bill is for buying a fire extinguisher. And I did some intense cursive deciphering. So I also spent time in Westover's archive, and under the help of Nancy and Rich, I did some research for Melanie and also digitized an old photo album. And here are the scans of that photo album I digitized. For the Westover Hillstead Connection Project, I focused on Mary Cassatt. Cassatt is an Impressionist painter and friends with both Theodate Pope, the architect of Westover, and Mary Hillard, the founding head of Westover. I saw Cassatt's oil painting, Sarah Handing a Toy to the Baby, in a bedroom at Hillstead. Although it first appeared to me as a sweet and even a little boring painting of a family, the more I looked at it, the deeper I read into it. In fact, both of my connection project and my museum studies project ended up having something to do with this painting. Inspired by Sarah, I created my piece Growth for my connection project. And Growth is the piece on the left and Sarah is on the right. As a whole, my connection project resulted in an exhibition called Flowering Masquerade. Besides Growth, it also includes two of my previous artworks on the right here. Originally inspired by paintings of three female artists, my work subverted the flower icon by transforming it into a presence like a mask in a masquerade, commenting on the idea of a constructed femininity. So, if you're interested in seeing drawings of people with flower heads, please follow me to the Schumacher Gallery after my presentation, where I'll be sharing more about my artworks. Besides the Connection project, I also worked on the Museum Studies project, which resulted in my symposium paper. And before I start, I want to give everyone a heads up that there will be Chinese translations along with the English text for my parents because they're here today. So thank you for everyone's understanding. Joint effort, collective learning in Mary Cassatt's mother and children paintings. Mary Cassatt's oil painting, Sarah Handing a Toy to the Baby, focuses on maternal affection and familial intimacy. Despite the compressed blue background, the naked baby and the casual clothing of the two women highlight the notion of a domestic space, while Cassatt precisely captures the mother's tender gaze through her relaxed, downcast eyes. The soft and loose brushstrokes, angled chair, and the inward folds of the sleeve all contribute to an intimacy between family members fostered by the mother's care. Sarah is one of over 100 such artworks Cassatt rendered between the 1880s and the 1910s. And you can see some of them in this slide here. Depicting maternal care and domestic harmony, these works earned her the reputation as a painter of mothers and children. Critics at the time were mesmerized by the tenderness, charm of infancy, and above all, a sense of quote-unquote home intimacy in Cassatt's works. They praised her through the lens of gender essentialism, attributing her ability to capture such maternal care to her identity as a woman, claiming that, quote-unquote, woman alone is capable of painting childhood. For all the praise Cassatt received for these paintings, which is ironic since she was never a mother herself, Cassatt was equally criticized for her 1893 mural, Modern Woman. A side note, because this work is now lost, I only have black and white photo, so I apologize for the low image quality. Centering a group of women picking fruit to symbolize contemporary women's pursuit of knowledge, as you can see in this detailed view of the central panel, the mural was criticized for its overly bright colors and its resemblance to a progressive reality. What sparked such disapproval in Modern Woman was a lack of familial virtue and maternal care commonly depicted in Cassatt's mother-children paintings. Distracted by the non-threatening and amiable subject of care and nurturing, critics perhaps overlooked the ever-present theme of collective endeavor in Cassatt's works, which celebrate women's active role in creating a new reality through the lessons of love and community. Therefore, like Modern Woman, Cassatt's mother and children paintings, particularly Sarah Handing a Toy to the Baby, not only assert a female space for collective learning, but also impactfully create an embodied viewing experience of tutelage, thus instructing a new reality for women's independence through the joint effort of community. Century male critics were especially drawn to what they termed as the quote-unquote home intimacy in Cassatt's mother-children paintings, which reinforced the feminine duty women were expected to serve. For instance, writer Camille Moncler described Cassatt's artistic process as, quote, feminine in her tenderness and grace, end quote. Viewing Sarah, he praised Cassatt, quote, what a suggestion of the home intimacy. What pictorial gifts this eminent artist reveals. She knows how to be feminine without being finical, end quote. Critic Theodore Duret and jurist Karl Huysman further expanded on this gender essentializing statement, with the former claiming that, quote, Cassatt's art reveals itself at once as a woman's, end quote, and the latter blatantly asserting that, quote, there is a particular feeling which a man does not know how to render. His fingers are too big not to leave clumsy and brutal marks. Only the woman can pose a child, dress it, pin it without breaking it, end quote. Why did the so-called feminine qualities in Cassatt's painting evoke such praise among the audience? Feminist scholar Norma Brut attributes part of Cassatt's popularity to the societal changes in the late 19th century Paris. Brut suggests that women joined the workforce in increasing numbers in the 1890s, moving away from their traditional role as housewives. The growing female presence in the public spurred controversies and challenged the traditional idea that women belonged to the private sphere while men occupied the public. Booth further points out that infant abandonment was common, as poverty often left working-class women unable to afford raising children, forcing them to abandon newborns in state-run housing systems. For example, here on the left, there is a magazine illustration of an unwed mother from 1902, and on the right, there's another illustration which shows a working-class woman legally abandoning her child to the state-run hospital for needy children. Therefore, Booth argues that Cassatt's mother-children images are, quote, a classed projection of a conservative and repressive social ideal during this era, end quote, affirming middle and upper-class women's responsibility as mothers. In this light, Moncler, Duret, and Huysman were eager to emphasize the quote-unquote feminine qualities in Sarah because it helped them to reinforce the idea of separate spheres, thereby denying the possibility of women taking on progressive roles in modern Paris. Despite the praise Sarah received, Cassatt's mural Modern Woman was attacked by critics in its portrayal of women free from domestic labor. In the Chicago World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, works by female artists were displayed in the Women's Building with the general purpose of celebrating women's achievements from primitive to modern times. Cassatt's Modern Woman was one of them, with a focus on contemporary women's search for knowledge. Again, I apologize for the black and white photos, but these are old, so yeah. Cassatt divided Modern Woman into 3 panels, separately depicting women in pursuit of fame on the left, knowledge at the center, and art on the right. The central and largest panel portrays women picking apples in a garden. Cassatt disapproved of the subject she was given. Quote, the modern woman as glorified by worth, end quote. In a letter she wrote, quote, "That would hardly describe my idea. Of course, I have tried to express the modern woman in the fashions of our day, and have tried to represent those fashions as accurately and as much in detail as possible," end quote. Cassatt intentionally used bright blues and greens, and depicted her models with contemporary dresses ordered from well-known Parisian clothing stores, and was sure that she had, quote, "tried to make the general effect as bright, as gay, as amusing as possible," end quote. This is a colored photograph of the mural that gives a sense of the color Cassatt used. And this slide provides a sense of what the entire mural may have looked like. By the 1890s, many women's colleges were newly founded, and as a female artist who received higher education herself, Cassatt conveyed her support for women's pursuit of knowledge in her mural. Regardless of Cassatt's progressive vision, critics remarks that figures in modern woman were quote-unquote out of scale, and the colors garish and primitive. Such criticisms are especially ironic given that a mural titled "Primitive Woman," hanging across from modern woman, received much praise. The mural's artist, Mary Fairchild Macmonnies, depicted women performing daily duties in a lush forest, taking care of children, carrying water jars, or serving men. Figures are semi-nude, adorned with flowing classical garments that emphasize elegance. It was clear that Macmonnies prioritized the decorative function of the mural over delivering any message, as she herself defined the mural as, quote, "a superior sort of wallpaper that does not strike the eye or disturb the attention by any vigorous or salient spots," end quote. As Macmonnies had wished, Primitive Woman was extensively praised. Critics thought it was, quote, "reverent in tone and dignified in treatment, had figures that were sufficiently large, and exemplified the true spirit of mural decoration," end quote. In comparing Primitive Woman to Modern Woman, writer for the Chicago Record, Henry Fuller, admired Macmonnies' quote-unquote gentle treatment of the subject, and denounced Cassatt's mural as, quote-unquote, assaulting the viewer's eye. He further elevated his criticism of the work to an attack on Cassatt's character. Quote, "The impudent greens and brutal blues of Miss Cassatt seem to indicate an aggressive personality. She works with men in Paris on their own ground," end quote. Cassatt, at once praised for her tenderness and grace, was now accused of having an aggressive personality. The conflation of Cassatt's personality with her subject matter demonstrates a slippage between Cassatt's portrayal of woman and her own moral character. This slippage in the criticism she received indicates that Cassatt's portrayal of modern woman did not comply with the traditional representation of woman, and thus her work made no sense to the critics. As a result, the construction of a new reality in which women pursue knowledge as a community makes this tutelage seem like a transgressive act. Despite the transgression critics identified in Cassatt's work, the tutelage as Eve's act of picking fruit was being redefined among Cassatt's contemporaries as a positive symbol. While Eve has long symbolized human sin in the biblical narrative, in the 19th century, feminists reshaped Eve into a positive icon, thus encouraging women to take active roles in society. For example, socialist Eliza Sharples saw Eve as representing liberty and female independence. Similarly, suffragist Elizabeth Cady Stanton justifies Eve's act to advocate for women's education, arguing that Eve gained a desire for knowledge rather than lust through the forbidden fruit. And I included the cover of the Woman's Bible, which is edited by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and other feminist scholars. Similarly, in fact, the Woman's Building Guidebook also attempts to frame Genesis as a positive allegory. Maud Howe Elliott, who wrote descriptions of the artworks exhibited in the building, opened the chapter with a clear statement. Quote, "We have eaten the fruits of the tree of knowledge, and the Eden of idleness is hateful to us. We claim our inheritance and have become workers, not cumberers of the earth." End quote. Despite acknowledging the importance of women's education and their expanding roles, Elliott believes that education serves the ultimate purpose of reinforcing conventional gender roles, and disapproves of any deviation from this philosophy. Macmoney's Primitive Woman received a relatively enthusiastic review. For that, it, quote, "shows a true decorative sense, and honor the idea for which our building stands, namely, the feminine qualities of reserve, delicacy, and refinement," end quote. Elliott gives high praise to another pair of murals in the Woman's Building, Arcadia on the left here, and Woman of Plymouth on the right. Although Arcadia has a similar subject matter to Modern Woman, fruit picking here remains a pastoral activity, one enjoyed by women whose classical attire and leisurely staged poses evoke a sense of nostalgia for an idealized rural past. Distant from the realism of the present day, their act of picking fruit is not threatening. Likewise, Arcadia's counterpart, Woman of Plymouth, centers domestic activities, prioritizing the performance of womanly duties. In the foreground, several groups of women in plain dresses and aprons are washing clothes, sewing, or cradling a baby. A separate scene of education is depicted in the background as a teacher reads books to a group of children. Here, education is subordinate to the domestic roles women perform. As Elliott writes in the guidebook, quote, "an assertion of the prime duties of a woman, the homemaker and caretaker," end quote. Hence, as Elliott continues to suggest, the role of the mural is to, quote, "remind us that unless the higher education now open to our sex makes women better and wiser wives and mothers, it is a failure." End quote. Together, the two murals illustrate the concept of female education either exists as a distant and nostalgic notion, or serves woman's eventual return to domesticity. Contrary to reinforcing women's domestic roles through a distant past, Cassat's mural celebrates contemporary women actively engaged in their learning. Instead of standing idly in elegant poses, women here are absorbed in their task, grabbing or sorting fruit. Furthermore, unlike Woman of Plymouth, which divides women into separate groups, Modern Woman presents their collective effort as women collaborate through holding a basket together or helping each other to pass fruit. The woman's devotion to their task and the absence of domestic duties reveal the innovation of Cassat's mural. It offers a pure affirmation of contemporary women's pursuit of knowledge, free from maternal expectations. Such a progressive portrayal of women was avoided in Elliott's guidebook. In a single paragraph, Elliott only makes a reference to the sheriffs in the border, complimenting the babies as, quote-unquote, quite beautifully painted. And you can see the babies in this amplified image I included here, thereby avoiding the entire mural or any further commentary on the subject of modern woman. Even though Cassatt, like her contemporaries, reclaimed Eve's pursuit of knowledge as a positive allegory, Eliot's avoidance of the mural suggests that Cassatt's vision is more transgressive than just depicting woman's acquisition of knowledge. The progressive nature of modern woman lies in its construction of a new reality, where woman could independently pursue the pleasures of life beyond the home. Therefore, Cassatt's progressive reality reveals that the fruits of tutelage are transgressively the pleasures of female independence. Despite the transgressive nature of tutelage in modern woman, the tutelage in Cassatt's mother-children paintings has been interpreted as the teaching of women's social roles in confined spaces. Cassatt's 1905 oil painting, Woman with a Sunflower, as you can see here, depicts the mother teaching her daughter to observe her appearance in the mirror. The mother's body forms a protective triangle, while her left arm and on the daughter's shoulder provides physical support that facilitates the act of teaching. Art historian Priscilla Pollock argues that Cassatt often uses the painting's compressed pictorial space to suggest an idea of social confinement. For example, in Lydia crocheting the garden here, Pollock observes that the garden setting, quote, seemed to collapse towards the picture plane, and the comfortable vista beyond the figure, opening out to include a view of the sky and beyond, is decisively denied, end quote. Consequently, this outdoor setting produces the same intimacy as a domestic interior, transforming itself into a space of quote-unquote seclusion and enclosure. Pollock then briefly parallels this compressed pictorial space to quote-unquote the social confinement of woman within the prescribed limits of bourgeois codes of femininity. In Woman with the Sunflower, Pollock's idea of the compressed space aptly applies, for the mother's dress and the daughter's feet are cut off by the frame, and their reflections in the large mirror are truncated at the painting's corner. Here, any spatial extension is denied. The background lacks furnishings or interior details, and the edges of the painting close in on the figures. As a result, Cassatt could be addressing, in Pollock's words, quote-unquote, the social confinement of woman. Furthermore, Pollock suggests that while the use of mirrors seemed to reinforce traditional themes of vanity, Cassatt's usage of the smaller mirror comments on the social constraints women face. She partly quotes writer John Berger's theory on the process of female socialization. Berger believes that, quote, the social presence of women has developed as a result of their ingenuity in living under such tutelage within such a limited space, end quote. Hence, the mirror reflects a miniature, a false image of a woman who has learned to navigate confined spaces as she socializes. Meanwhile, Cassatt's juxtaposition of the well-dressed woman with her naked child highlights their different stages of socialization. Therefore, the tutelage here could be about the daughter's impending socialization process. As Pollock suggests, the mother, quote, is initiating her daughter into the place in society which she herself occupies and which is her daughter's future, end quote. According to Pollock then, the tutelage in Cassatt's mother-children paintings like Woman with a Sunflower, calls attention to the combining roles of women and their initiation into those roles without being transgressive. In other words, following Paul's line of thinking, Cassat's paintings do not threaten the status quo, even if they can be read as critiquing them. However, similar to Modern Woman, Woman with a Sunflower may in fact challenge the status quo, even if it can be read as the teaching of a Woman with a Sunflower may in fact challenge the status quo, if it can be read as the teaching of a new reality through the suffrage movement, one that yields the fruits of independence. In the painting, both the prominent sunflower and the vivid yellow have clear associations with the American suffrage movement. The sunflower, originally the state flower of Kansas, was first adopted by Kansas suffragists who wore sunflower pins and buttons. Here on the left, there's a suffrage pin with a sunflower decoration, and on the right, there's a sunflower button inscribed with "We want to vote for president" in 1904. Later, sunflowers also became the symbol of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. The color yellow was used in suffrage flag in parades, and an article in The Suffragist interprets yellow or gold as, quote, "the color of light and life. It's as the torch that guides our purpose, pure and unswerving," end quote. Previously, Cassat used the sunflower symbol in Modern Woman, in which sunflowers flourished in the borders along the mural, indicating that women's political independence is tied to their pursuit of knowledge and the resulting freedom. Cassat's use of feminist symbols was likely intentional, as she supported and advocated for women's rights in her letters to her friend and suffragist, Louise Havemeyer. The painting, Woman with a Sunflower, in fact, was a contribution to the movement, as it was displayed along with Cassat's other 20 or so paintings in a 1915 exhibition organized by Havemeyer to raise funds for the suffrage campaign. In context of the thriving feminist movement and Cassat's direct support of the cause, the tutelage in Woman with a Sunflower becomes intergenerational through the expanded view of the mirror. In the painting, Cassat includes two mirrors, one being the large mirror in the background, the other being the small mirror held by the child and her mother. While the large mirror presents a different viewpoint of the figures, the handheld mirror offers a more focused view of the child's face, reinforced by Cassat's tighter brushwork. As both reflections alter reality to offer a new perspective of the subjects, the presence of mirrors in the painting expands the confined frame to construct new spaces. The girl's hands clasp onto her mother's and reinforce their joint effort to envision a new reality. As the mirrors then demonstrate the creation of a new perspective, the layering of the reflections indicates that this intergenerational joint effort to construct new spaces, from teaching to learning, from community to independence. This construction of space for the teaching of independence persists in Cassat's mother-children paintings, like Sarah handing a toy to the baby. While the inward angling of the chair in the composition creates a confined space, this space can be now read as the mother's construction of a new space of their own, separate from that of the viewers. Furthermore, Sarah's left hand hangs in a position that overlaps with her mother's right arm, as if it were a surrogate their effort in teaching the next generation. The mother passes her role as mentor to her daughter, who continues this transmission by passing the toy to her younger sibling. From Sarah's passing of the toy, to the baby's receiving of the toy, to the infant's arm draping over the mother's shoulder, they are as tightly bonded as family as they are separate individuals. Rather than validating Paul's argument of the social initiation process into womanhood, the contrast between the undressed baby and the clothed mother and daughter emphasized the individuality of the figures. Not only does each figure have distinctive hair color, but Sarah's bright orange dress also stands out from the complementary blue background, thereby distinguishing her figure from the others. This distinction emphasizes that the mother's teaching results in Sarah's independence. Even without the overt symbolism of the suffrage sunflower, the theme of woman's independence persists here as the result of tutelage. While the mother constructs a space in which her children can gain independence, ultimately, Casas invites the audience to experience this tutelage through the physicality of brushstrokes. Scholar Anthea Callan suggests that, quote, raw and unblended brushstrokes can encode the sensation of touch, both the artist's touch and the sense and the experience of touching skin, end quote. Such raw and unblended brushwork is seen on Sarah's lace, the mother's gauzy sleeve, and around the figure's head, showing Casas' hand in the painting. Her touch conveys the labor of constructing a new reality, the very reality in which the mother teaches her children independence. Through this phenomenological interpretation, an individual's optical perception of an artwork becomes an embodied viewing experience. In the painting, then, joined in the effort of that tutelage, Casas brings the actual viewing space into the constructed pictorial space. While the looser brushstroke embodies Casas' labor of love, the volume and clarity defining the figure's faces and the act of passing the toy conveys the sensation of love. The brushstrokes that define the tentative yet firm passing of the toy and the delicate and soft touch between Sarah and the baby are themselves tentative yet firm, delicate and soft. They then embodied the very love and care involved in this collective effort to construct a new space. Through her brushwork, heavy with meaning, Casas teaches her audience to experience the comforting embrace of the mother's arm and the caress between Sarah and the baby's fingertips, and invites the viewer to become part of a community of women joined in the collective effort to envision their independence. Understanding now that the progressive message in modern woman has always been embodied in Casas' mother and children paintings, each work then becomes instructive towards building a reality in which women enjoy the pleasures and love of independence. A mother helping her child see beyond the provided pictorial space. A mother bending a branch to allow her baby take their own fruit. A mother supporting her baby so that her sister can pass over a flower. A mother and daughter collectively and lovingly supporting a baby girl to stand. As Casas' works that are joined in effort of literally creating space for women, describes the way her family friend's daughter is quote-unquote wild about the school. Her description of the child's enthusiasm as wild from learning in a female-centered community is a far cry from the tame education women receive through MacMoney's mural, which leads to the performance of domestic duties. Pursuing, in Cassa's words, such wild pleasures of education in a school for women is achievable only because of Theodate and Mary's joint effort in establishing Westover. Cassa likewise teaches this joint effort through her instructive pictorial spaces and embraces the pleasures she described to Theodate as, quote, "Isn't it splendid to be able to influence old generations?" That's it for my presentation. Thank you guys for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions about my symposium paper or about my SOMSI experience in general. So yeah, if any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, yeah, Louisa.
In the archives, is that where you found the Cassat, like the letters from Cassat, or how did you go about finding all those specific?
So actually, I found a letter from a book like called Mary Cassat's Selected Letters. So it's like a compilation of all Cassat's letters, and I found this letter in particular where she writes to Theodate. Yeah. Yeah, but in the archives, there's unfortunately, like, I didn't find a lot about Cassat. Yeah, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Yes. Caleb.
Yeah. Did you come up with any info about what the toy was? Or if not, I wondered if you had any interpretation of it yourself.
So, no, we don't know what the toy was, but I think, in fact, it helps, like, it supports my argument because, like, without knowing what the toy is, the act of passing the toy is more important than what the toy itself was. So, like, we can see that Cassat wants to emphasize they're passing the toy, they're passing that tutelage. So, the toy, what the toy actually is not that, like, important. So, yeah. Yes.
You must dream about this painting.
Yeah.
You know this painting so well, and I would love to know in your journey as a scholar when you did your art yourself. So it looks like a drawing that you did
Yes.
with the flower faces. At what point in your scholarship did you do that piece?
Like here?
Yes.
So
It's wonderful.
I decided that I would create my piece growth like before I drafted my paper, and it's a very long process. I started the outline in like last year, like winterish, but then I just procrastinated and I started to work intensely like over like March and April, and I finished this pencil drawing like last week. Yeah. It's a long process, but it made me look at Sarah handing the toy to the baby so many times, and now I just know every detail of that thing. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yes.
That was amazing and moving scholarship, so thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Something I'm really interested in is, I think you said Mary Cassat herself didn't have children of her own. Did you come across any more research about that? Like, I think it's so fascinating that she figured mothers and children so often, but wasn't a mother herself.
Yeah.
Like, could you talk a little bit more
Yes.
about what you found about that?
Yeah. So Mary Cassatt was never married or had like any children. But at first, she was an impressionist painter. She was very involved. She was like living in Paris and very involved in the impressionist circle with people like Degas and Monet. And she did not do like specifically mother and children paintings at first. But then I think around 1880s, when her family was visiting her in Paris, she started doing studies and small works of mother and children. And later, I think it just like people really liked them, so she started doing more and more of them. And in my opinion, partly I think that partly is because they are so popular, so it made her her reputation, so she kept doing like more and more of them. But like throughout her life, she also did other subject matter, other paintings that are not mother and children. Thank you for asking.
With the black and white mural that you showed us, and then you showed us another image that had a cover overlay of what it might have looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Were you the one that did the interpretation with the color, and if not, where did you find that?
Like this one?
Yeah.
So because the mural is lost now, so we don't have like a high resolution color photograph of it. But this, it was partly photographed when it was on exhibition. So I found this image online that includes that partly colored photograph people took when it was exhibited, and they overlaid on the black and white photo. Yeah. Yes.
Do we know the details of how it got lost?
I think what I came across was that after the exhibition, the murals were kind of left there and no one took care of them, so I guess they are lost after the fair ended. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And also because the exhibition is in America, in Chicago, and Cassatt is living in Paris, so she kind of, after she finished the mural, she just kind of, she's good, she's in Paris, she did not worry about it. And like, the interesting thing is like, she received a lot of criticisms like on this painting, but she herself did not worry about them because she's in Paris enjoying her life. Yeah. Yes, Vivian.
What was the process of like, I guess like researching and just like working at the museum and everything? Like, do you think it was like rewarding? How would you describe?
So for the museum and my research, it's like actually like two very separate processes. At the museum, I do work for like Melanie and their archives and stuff, but my paper is like separate. So I meet with Ali starting in like January-ish, and then at first I just read a lot of books on Cassatt because so first we narrowed down my interest like to I want to do something about Cassatt and probably her works. And then I started reading like very general books about Cassatt and like articles of previous scholars that wrote on her, and then kind of narrowed down a focus like what my argument is, and then more specifically trying to do more research and find more materials about like my argument. And my thesis, like it didn't finalize until we're like halfway through or like almost 2/3 through the paper. So it's like an ongoing process. Like I didn't really know what my final thesis would be starting off, but at the end it worked out. So yeah. Yes, Charles.
So I know Ali mentioned at the beginning that you kind of also bring an artist eye to these things. Would you say that like your artistic eye kind of, I know that they're sectioned, but like do you think that your artistic eye played more of a role in this than your like scholarly perspective, or do you think they both kind of had equal roles in this?
I think, like, I would say being an artist made me like be able to resonate and relate to my research more, because like, for example, when reading people critiquing, like criticizing this artwork, I was like, what do they mean? Because it's such a brilliant piece of art. So I think being an artist really helped me resonate with Mary Cassatt as I'm writing the paper. But the scholar, being a student who's interested in art history also, I think they both played a very important part. Yeah. And did you? And I think part of the reason why I chose Mary Cassatt is because I think her artworks are very a pleasure to look at, and I like her artworks.
Did you start your like two other paintings in the flowerhead series before you were working on the Cassatt's artwork?
Yes, those two was before my SOMSI, so these two are one I did last summer and one I did in the fall.
So like I'm curious about how the idea of like flowerhead was from, and also like how does Cassatt work fit into the idea of your theory?
Yes, so the flower has on the right, this is the first one I did, and at that time I didn't really like think about an argument or something, but I just liked drawing flowers and people, so that's why I chose to draw it in the first place. But for growth, I created it with the argument in mind, and essentially the flower head, by placing them on the figures' heads, it allows me to comment on the idea of a constructive femininity. And if you're interested, please follow me after to the gallery where I'll talk more about these artworks. So, yes. So now I have some thank yous to make. First, I want to thank everyone for coming to my symposium. Thank you all for being so kind and patient and listening to me talk for nearly an hour. Yeah. So I want to thank Melanie for guiding me through my internship experience. It was a pleasure to work with her, and very touching to see people at Hillstead preserving the legacy of the Pope family. I also want to thank Nancy and Rich for helping me at the archives. I learned so much about Westover's history and handling archival materials with you. Thank you, Alyssa, for coordinating my transportation, and Michael for driving me to Westover. Thank you, Caleb, for helping me put together my exhibition and for printing out the huge title banner, mounting my works, and positioning them for me. Thank you, Carrie, for designing my beautiful flyer for the symposium. And thank you, Lindsay, for facilitating tech and live stream. Also want to thank Liz for helping me rehearse my presentation. And I want to thank my parents for coming today. I was really happy when you guys told me you got the early plane ticket to be here. an amazing teacher, advisor, and my biggest advocate. Thank you for always showing up and supporting me, telling me it's okay when I struggle, and reminding me that I'm good enough when I doubted myself. I can't imagine doing SOMSI without you, and I will miss you so much next year.
Can we give Lucy another round of applause? It is my pleasure to award Lucy her Certificate of Achievement within her internship program. And the stipend she earned for her 40 hours at Hillstead. So if you would please follow Lucy to the Schumacher Gallery. There are cookies, and she has pamphlets for you to explore her exhibition of her beautiful drawings. I apologize, I have to excuse myself because I have a class right now that I'm late for and they're really strict on attendance. But you can follow Lucy to the gallery and she'll continue her presentation there. Thank you all so much for coming.